Meryn Stegan has attacked the Imperial City. Tyrannus the Warbear has ridden to the Imperial City with the help of the Imperial Army. He fights with Meryn Stegan, however Meryn Stegan beats him. However, out of the red sky after the portal, Meryn Stegan looks up and sees a golden dragon. This dragon can only be one thing, Akatosh, controlled by Martin Septim. He strikes down with his claws and burns Meryn Stegan. Meryn Stegan flees to the portal of Oblivion and escapes to Oblivion. However, Akatosh took an axe to the face by Molag Bol. He was present that day and slashed Akatosh to the floor. Molag Bol, along with Meryn Stegan and the rest of the Oblivion army, ran back to their portal. They were never to be seen again for a very long time. However, Martin Septim died that day. However, the new Imperial family took over the Imperial Empire and would be their rulers for many years, all the way up to the timeline of Skyrim. For his service, Tyrannus the Warbear was given an army and land. Was given land north of Cyrodiil. After a while, he went gambling and gathered himself lots of money, and preparing to take something bigger than his castle. Tyrannus the Warbear gathered an army of Nords and Imperial soldiers. However, during that time, the Great War has broken out between the Aldmeri Domain and the Imperial Empire. The Empire rushes to fight, which gives Tyrannus the opportunity. He calls for aid. He sends a raven to the High King of Akavir, requesting his daughter for marriage and alliance. The High King of Akavir accepts and sends his fleet, and gathers his army and sends his fleet to Morrowind, past the island of Solstheim, and into the heart of Windhelm. Tyrannus, on a horse, so to speak, he rides to Windhelm with his army of Nords and Imperials. He knows this time the best time to strike, as the recent king or recent Jarl of Windhelm has been murdered by a dark elf and an Aragonian, which is so much disliked Aragonians and dark elves in those times, in the times of Skyrim. With this army, he marches, he besieges the great city of Windhelm. However, Windhelm surrenders, and the forces of Tyrannus walk in and take the place. However, he brings word of a great betrayal. The Akaviran army marches on Windhelm for their own glory, not for Tyrannus, their own glory. However, Tyrannus sends his army along with allies of the Imperials and Nords, and many farmers and peasants who want to redeem themselves and earn themselves land and titles. They march north to fight or die. Tyrannus the Warbear marches north. He holds the defensive ground, however Akavir marches towards him. He intends to break the spirit of his army. He marches up the hill, and the Nords and the Tyrannus the Warbear orders his men to in the shield wall. They hold back the Akaviran army with their lives. The Akaviran take down many of them. However, in a glimpse of sunlight, a Morrowind army heads towards them. They intend to stand with the Nords and defeat the Akaviran foreigners. They march with their cavalry and strike them down. The Akavirian army falls to the ground and shakes. Tyrannosaur Warburg steals the High King's horse, wheels out a great longsword, the same longsword he swung at Meryn's Dagon. He strikes down High King, stabbing him through the heart. And he pulls him down to the floor, and the sword goes right through his face and out the other end. He finishes off the rest of the men. The army encircles the rest of the Akavirian forces and hits them hard and destroys them. The Akavirian army falls and flees and tries to flee if they can, however they are struck down. They manage to get so far with their archers, however the archers are no much power for true Nords. The Nords rush towards them with their cavalry and break them and rout them from their shores. Morrowind army hits them back and they fall. When the Akavirian hit back at them, they manage to push them back a little bit. However, the peasants charge in. Only the peasants can still break his army. The red banner of the Black Dragon burns up while the bear of Windhelm stands strong. Tyrannos defeats his army, defeats their army, and takes the High King's head and his sons. From that day on, he's ended Akavirian army. He heads back to his palace to reside and build up his siege equipment. He expects the Emperor, after he's finished with the Great War, to come back and fight with him. He prepares for battle. He rides home for Windhelm and prepares for war. Tyrannos the Warbear walks into the Palace of Kings and sees his throne and sits at his throne. He sits and waits. A few months later, he receives word at the end of the Great War. To his luck, the Imperial Emperor thanks him his victory to save Windhelm from the enemy. He is happy and grants him all lands and titles and rights to the land. However, he then informs him of his defeat and the Imperial loss. And the Thalmors, who have demolished the religion of Talos. This causes great uproar in the politics of Skyrim. Many Skyrim lords go against that and join a small resistance group called the Stormcloaks. This is Tyrannos' second name. Tyrannos is not the leader of this rebellion, of this resistance group. They have no army, and they have no power to do anything against them, only their own legion lords. However, the Great War was a loss. Many Nord heroes have died, and many Imperials. Imperials are now the Thalmors' bitch. And the Thalmors, if the Imperial need help, the Thalmors will rush to their aid. This crushes all opposition to the Imperial Empire. However, the Imperial Empire is weak and controlled by the elves. And the resistance is small but strong. Little do they know, Tyrannos' son will eventually take command of the resistance forces and lead the Stormcloaks to victory and independence. However, he did get the High King Akavirian's wife, or daughter, not wife. Married to her, she produced a son. This boy was called Ulfric. He had a little nickname, Blaze, due to his sophisticated ways. Blaze was his nickname. His second name, Ulfric Stormcloak. He became a great fighter and even took guidance from the people in the mountains. They were called the Greybeards, and they showed him the power of the shout, one of the strongest, powerful things in the world, and could shatter a man's bones and even kill someone. Unfortunately, Ulfric's mother, the Akavirian princess, died in childbirth, unfortunately. However, it ends any alliance with Akaviria, even though Akaviria went against the Tyrannus. Still, the alliance is broken. He looks on the hunt for another bride. However, he calls to the Emperor for his daughter. The Emperor accepts due to Tyrannus' diplomatic ways. He knows this may ensure an alliance with any Imperial Empire. If the Imperials ever want to stand against the Thalmor, Windhelm will be their ally, and he will stand with them against any Thalmor. His second wife produced him a daughter. This girl's name was called Lyanna Stormcloak. She became an adventurer, and she knew how to use a blade after a while. She was betrothed to the Emperor's prince, or High King Torog. High King Torog was the young boy in command of the paramountcy of Skyrim. However, answering to his vassals and his liege lord, the Emperor. Lyanna eventually broke her betrothal to the High King. Well, she did it intentionally after Ulfric murdered the High King. After Ulfric murdered the High King, he fled back to Windhelm. Tyrannus was furious with him. However, this was sorted out, and apparently the murder was by the general of the Imperial Army in Skyrim. He said to Ulfric, "You are relieved from your murder." However, he lied, and that became Tyrannus' downfall. However, Tyrannus grew old. Jarl Tyrannus sat on his throne listening to his ambitious advisors pressing for war against the Imperials, and believes that the general of the Imperial Army, General Tullius, would not believe it, and it was a lie, wasn't true. Tyrannus didn't believe his counsellors. However, he went on a family trip. He went south for a ride near the Windhelm coast, not far from Valtham Towers, and close to the High Hrothgar, far in the mountains, on the throat of the world. He went out on an outing with his kids, his son Ulfric, and his daughter Lyanna, along with Rolf, who is someone that Lyanna will meet. This is long after when his kids got older, and he got even more older and went grey. He rode along, not far from the Imperial borders, Cyrodiil, as at the invitation of the general and the Aldmeric Dominion, one of the Thalmor emissaries. He rode far past for a while. However, out of the blue, an Imperial ambushed and killed Tyrannus. Ulfric was captured along with Rolf. However, Lyanna fled and managed to escape. However, she was captured by a few bandits a few days later and imprisoned. This is to set our story for Skyrim. She's imprisoned by bandits in a small dungeon cell, and Ulfric and Rolf both captured, along with a few other people. And the death of Tyrannus. This puts Ulfric in charge. With Tyrannus dead, Ulfric now leads the fallen defense, the resistance. Lyanna is a woman, and as females in those days could not inherit. So Ulfric was to lead the resistance. However, he was captured. Rolf inspired him to lead the forces of Stormcloaks. However, Ulfric was captured, and he was not very happy that his sister had escaped, and not him. However, he prayed that Lyanna would come back one day with an army and with powers, amazing powers, and the power to do good. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that story. This sets the story for Lyanna Stormcloak. Well, she won't exactly look like that, but you know. So Lyanna captured in the prison cell, which is where she goes to start her adventure, and this is where we start the series to Skyrim. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I will finish with the final and setting of Skyrim. The Skyrim series will be the longest and most exciting series that we will do. We will cover all the quests, and all the quests that we can actually do, and not the ones that just crash every time. Even with the odd modded ones, and the odd mods we have for it, like Longclaw. That'll be her sword. Even though it's from Game of Thrones, but still, we have the mod, and it's like 48 damage, and it's pretty sick. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and I will see you in the Skyrim series. Hope you guys enjoyed Oblivion though. That series is over, and now the time of the Dragonborn has come.